Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, Hoosier Energy's announcement that it will retire its Merrim generating station in 2023 is another closure in a long line of coal plant retirements in Indiana. With other utilities pledging to quit coal in the near future, reporter Mitch Legan discusses the state's slow shift to sustainable energy.
Indiana has a long history of coal consumption, and so does Doug Childs.
My grandfather rather, was a coal miner. And I literally worked in a coal plant in Ohio. So, they're near and dear to my heart.
Now CEO of the Utilities District of Western Indiana Rural Electric Co-op, Childs, much like the state itself, is at a bit of a crossroads. After almost 25 years of working with municipal utilities, Childs is now faced with an energy future that'll rely less on coal than it ever has.
Really what's happening is the economics of the whole power business have changed so much that generating power by coal is just not the cheapest way to go. By a long shot. So really it's just sheer economics have really caught up with Merrim, and really it's catching up or has caught up with virtually every coal plant in the country.
But recent developments in the coal industry have changed the outlook on coal. Tougher federal environmental regulations, market forces, and advancing technology have made coal more expensive than other forms of energy.
Now what's happening, the market is responding to the economic signals they have. And really coal is, regardless of what happens, coal is just too expensive right now to be a viable generating source anymore.
According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, Indiana is the second largest coal consumer in the country, behind Texas. In 2018, coal generated 70% of the state's electricity.
Indiana has enough coal, according to the Geological and Water Survey, to power us for another 500 years using today's technology.
Improvements in sustainable energy are making it more reliable, and natural gas is the cheapest it's ever been.
Things are changing everywhere. A lot will depend on what happens next November. When I came in the legislature, natural gas sold for $14 a therm. Last week it sold for under $2.
But old habits die hard. The state is drafting a long-term energy plan. Many in the coal industry are concerned with the reliability of other energy sources, which is why Representative Ed Soliday is pushing for a bill that would make it harder for utilities to close a coal plant.
Whether that's coal or rabbits on a treadmill, we need the lights to come on when we flip the switch. We're in transition. It's not the first time, won't be the last, but we're in transition, and all we're asking is to be able to manage it.
Among other things, the state would have to review possible coal plant closures beginning now through 2021 and determine whether the closure is what they consider, quote, reasonable.
And as a result, they're going to be able to power your factories more reliably and less expensively, generally speaking, right now, than alternative energy sources. And I think that's one of the ripple effects that people, they need to think about in terms of making too rapid a transition from where we are now to the future.
Environmental groups and even the NAACP have spoken out against the bill, saying it props up the coal industry and would disproportionately harm communities of color. But those in the coal industry say keeping coal plants around protects Indiana's energy supply and helps ratepayers.
The energy module of the future, it may not be wind and solar, it may be something entirely different, but we don't want to put forth policy or make decisions that's going to drive the cost of electricity up substantially during that interim period before that's available.
Childs says that won't be the case. He says consumers won't see their rates increase, which would most definitely happen if the utility continued to rely on Merrim and its coal-fired units. He says it's possible customers could even see small savings starting around 2023.
Last year, Merrim only ran at about a 58% capacity factor, and there were 3 months that Merrim didn't run at all. The lights stayed on. There is certainly reliability is always a concern, but we can run a reliable grid without Merrim, certainly.
He says advancing without coal is going to take some planning, but the Merrim site will most likely be reused.
There's a tremendous amount of transmission capacity available there, which you could imagine. I could definitely see a possibility of developing solar, a large solar field on that site. So, the site of Merrim is very valuable and will definitely be reused.
And Mitch Legan joins us now for a little bit more. Mitch, as Indiana's future of energy changes, Right now, how many coal-fired plants are there in the state?
Right, so this is, as of November 2019, that's the most up-to-date information I could get, and that's from the Energy Information Administration, as I was talking about. There are 16 coal-fired power plants in the state, and the top 8 really kind of carry the state with that electricity generation. They are the big heavy hitters, more or less, and they provided about 55 million megawatts of electricity in 2018, and again, those bottom 8 are more for intermittent use.
So can you put this into perspective for us? How many different energy sources are there in the state?
Right, and so as I said in the package, the 70% of Indiana's energy or electricity was generated by coal in 2018. That same year, wind powered 5% of electricity, where biomass, solar, and hydroelectric, they combined for just over 1% of the utility scale generation. So, there's a ways to go with that sustainable future.
And really quickly, we talked about the bill and that story. What's the latest with that?
Yep, and so I talked with Becky Thiel, our environmental reporter, and she says, all there is to do is wait right now. It's heading to the Senate for consideration.
All right, Mitch, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.